In Egypt, the river Nile creates a fertile green valley across the desert. It was by the banks of the river that one of the oldest civilizations in the world began. The ancient Egyptians lived and farmed along the Nile, using the soil to produce food for themselves and their animals. Today, we will stop by some of the important sites to visit that are located on the river Nile. First of all, what do you know about the Nilometer? The Nilometer in modern Cairo, on the southern tip of Rhoda Island facing El Fustat to the east, is a rather unique historical site, often overlooked by visitors to Cairo. It has the properties of being one of the oldest structures in Cairo built after the Arab conquest, as well as having a link to Egypt's pharaonic past. The Nilometers, in Arabic known as Miqyas al-Nil, was used to measure the flood levels of the Nile River and is a heritage of Egypt's distant past, when such structures dotted the course of Egypt's Grand River. These types of devices continued to be useful up until the modern era, when the Nile was tamed by modern dams. During August and September, it was used to regulate the distribution of water as well as to compute the levy of taxes paid as tribute by Egypt to the Arab Caliph, since the generosity of the Nile was in large part an indication of Egypt's prosperity. It was built by order of the Abbasid Caliph al-Mutawakkil under the direction of Ahmad ibn Muhammad al-Hasib at the end of his reign, and that was in 861. The Nilometer is a somewhat more sophisticated instrument than earlier examples, such as the one on Elephantine Island in the Nile at Aswan. It consists of a pit that extends well below the level of the Nile, that in turn connects with the Nile through tunnels dug on 3 levels on its eastern side. These tunnels are now blocked off from the Nile so that the Nilometer no longer functions. The pit, which is lined with stone, is circular at the bottom and rectangular at the top. Is accessed by a staircase on the interior walls. Its walls have four recesses with pointed arches and small, relatively thin columns to either side, adorned with two types of zigzag framing decorations carved on its stone voussoirs, though these arches, known as terrace points, are the same type as those used in Gothic architecture. They preceded the Gothic arch by some 400 years. In the center of the pit, a marble octagonal column with a coronation capital that rises from its depth, surmounting a millstone. At the top, there is a wooden beam spanning the Nilometer. To measure the Nile flood, this column is graded and divided into 19 cubits. The flood that this Nilometer measured was both important to rulers of Egypt as well as the whole population. An ideal flood fired the Nilometer up to the 16th mark, and less than this could mean drought and famine. On the other hand, if the measurement exceeds the 19 cubits, a catastrophic flood was at hand. In the days prior to the expected flood, this column would be appointed with saffron and musk in order to help induce a good water level. Well, at least it shows how people in the past used to live and manage their daily life and also calculate days of flood. Maybe the most important thing about these people was that they were very well organized, always have alternatives, and ready for any natural disaster, which sometimes some people lack today with all the available technologies. Today, there is another landmark that rises on the horizon, the Cairo Tower, from which one can see a wonderful view for the Nile. It is nice to be up high in Cairo. It gives one a perspective view of this great city, with its very modern and very ancient districts. Anyone who has stood atop the citadel or from the upper floors of some of the taller hotels is aware of the grand views that Cairo offers. One of the best views is from the Cairo Tower, located on Gezira Island, just north of the Museum of Modern Art, which provides a panoramic vision of Cairo. This 187-meter tall tower, in the form of a latticework tube that fans out slightly at the top, is said to imitate a lotus plant and ranks only fourth among the world's highest towers. It is made of granite, the same material often used by the ancient Egyptians, and is about 45 meters taller than the Great Pyramid at Giza. There is also an interesting restaurant that rotates at an almost unnoticeable speed. Signatures of all the presidents and various other prominent figures who visited the tower are here in the honoring book, and even engraved in the tower's walls, keeping unforgettable memories. The best time to visit the tower is at sunset, when millions of twinkling lights come by. From here, one can make out, on a clear day, the easternmost extent of Cairo, where the dark gray buildings run up against the cliff face of the Muqattam Hills. Looking west, the pyramids mark the limits of the city and the start of the desert. Below, the Nile River flows serenely north to the Mediterranean, seeming to slice Cairo in two. To better facilitate the views, one can use, of course, the telescope. If you have some time, just try to stop by Kalsoum Museum, another landmark, but in singing. The museum is next to the Nilometer on Rhoda Island. Kalsoum occupies an undisputedly unique position in Oriental songs. She was known in Arabic as Kawkab al-Sharq, or Star of the East, for she was a most powerful symbol in the Middle East. She was also called the Lady, regarded as the most gifted female voice of the 20th century. She had a popularity that knew no boundaries and was a phenomenon, as was her voice. Not only was she considered a legend in the Arab countries, but her voice also reached many parts of the world at a time when Arabic music seemed like a mystery to much of the Western world. She was born into a poor family in a small village east of the Nile Delta in 1904. Kalsoum was the youngest of 3 children and lived the normal, simple life of the country. As a peasant's daughter, she grew up under the influence of religious instruction. She was taught religious chants from her father, and he was an imam or Quran leader at a local mosque as a kind of education. With time, he became impressed with her keen memorization and the astonishing strength of her voice. He then began taking her along with her elder brother to events where they would chant to help the family earn money. Her father dressed her in boys' clothing because it wasn't in the Egyptian peasant tradition to have his women or girls sing and appear in front of strangers. Despite her rural manners, her natural skill was recognized early on, and it brought her to the attention of society. In 1923, her family moved to Cairo with high hopes for their young daughter to become a professional singer in the city. There, she began training, and her father hired a number of music teachers. Her great ambition, love for knowledge, and eagerness to learn was amazing. This was what gave her a chance in that new world she was trying to conquer. Soon she became a woman of great wealth and power. During her later years, she was the confidant of presidents and kings, and above all, President Gamal Abdel Nasser's unofficial ambassador in the region. She traveled the Arabic and Western world in support of her government. When she died in 1975, 4 million mourners walked the streets of Cairo to honor their beloved singer. It is of no doubt that she was the greatest singer of her time. Until this day, her allure and fame have never died away. She truly represented the Egyptian and Arab nation in every way. Most of her precious belongings and oldest records and tapes were moved to this museum, on the site of the Ministerial Palace. This is a beautiful place to visit for those who know her or even curious to learn more about her. There, one can absorb the story of this amazing Egyptian woman, holding on to her silk scarf, which she could never do without during performances. It is really an interesting museum to visit. One of the best places just to stop by, especially that it is very close to the Nilometer. If you are visiting the Nilometer, just do not miss this chance. These are some of the interesting places to visit in Cairo, and still there are more. If you are spending your vacation here in Cairo, you can find a lot of things and amazing places to visit.